Before we start the talk, I thought I would make a suggestion to you. I know you have small hive beetles, and you probably use all sorts of things to keep them under control, but they do get out of control. So I was in the apiary just a little while ago, and I mentioned what I and a number of other beekeepers do to chase the small hive beetle out of the hives. First, you need to get some cheap pressed cardboard coasters, like they use in bars, coasters that are made of pressed paper. They're cheap. Go to your friendly bar and get some. Or get somebody to go to their friendly bar and get some. It is possible that they are sold in party stores, I don't know. But it's the cheap pressed paper coasters. You got that? Yep. Okay. Then you get wintergreen oil. Do you have a secretary writing down things? Somebody's writing down things. Good. You put 3 drops of wintergreen oil on the coaster. 3 drops. If you put more on, you will chase your bees out, and that is not what you want to do. You put the coaster on the top bars of the top brood chamber. Now, it will not kill the small hive beetle. It chases them out of the hive. So you must put a coaster on every one of your hives. If you don't, what's going to happen? They'll go out of one hive and into the untreated one. Then you've got more hive beetles than you really wanted. So, the bees will chew up these cheap coasters, and you will find peculiar, sort of fluffy, weird colored rubbish. Well, go back and get some more coasters. You can tell when you need to refresh the wintergreen oil simply by picking the coaster up and giving it a sniff. And if you don't sniff very much, put some more drops on. 3 drops maximum, and put the coaster back in, and that's it.
1 coaster per hive?
Yes. Yes.
How long does that last?
It's going to depend on a lot of things. One is going to be the size of the colony that you've got, because they are generating heat and also circulating air through. So the vapors from the wintergreen oil are going to be going through the hive and out. So depending on how hard the bees are working on their ventilation, that's what it's going to depend on.
And on the brood chamber, not the super.
Not the honey supers. The brood chambers, top bars of the brood chambers. Okay? Then there is one other thing that you can do. Get chickens and let them run loose. Chickens love the migrating larva and will eat the migrating larva. The chickens do not want to eat your bees, but they really love and will chase down and eat the migrating larva. Okay? Yes?
Hold on, folks, keep it down, please.
I'm taking carpet that comes out of a house, turning it upside down, and enclosing my bees with it, so that they don't have direct access to the ground. And it seems to be working. I have less beetles right now than I've had.
Okay, well, that may work. You can give that a try. But I've given you 2 things you can do. And nice thing about chickens is you get eggs Now, we are going to see about stress in honeybee. Stress is a buzzword of today. You can turn on the radio, the television, and you will hear something about, oh, the stress of this and the stress of that. And people are going to the doctors and saying, oh, doctor, I'm stressed. I need something for it. And it is the popular thing to have today, stress. Well, we need to see. Let's see if this works. Okay, we can look at a few stresses for humans. You've probably got more, but I want to make a point. You got a flat tire and a busy road and you're going somewhere. Ooh, stress. Well, you get the flat tire fixed, you go on your way. So it was a short-term thing. It's over, everything's fine, you can breathe a sigh of relief. You got a tiresome neighbor. They're really very nice, but every Saturday night they have a rather noisy party. So it's sort of an intermittent but recurring stress. Money, that's perpetual. Have we got enough money to go on vacation? No. Well, have we got money to? No. So that's one that seems to be always with people. Well, we can look at stresses on honeybees, and let's see what we can do. Now, some of you are experienced beekeepers, and you may be mentoring some newbies. Well, those newbies can learn something from this, and you old beekeepers can think about when you are mentoring newbies. And I do hope you are mentoring. Well, here's a clumsy beekeeper. He's pulled out the frames, he's put them on the ground, he's about ready to step backwards right in the middle of a brood frame. He's got them all mixed up. He has absolutely no idea what order to put them back into. Those poor bees, they've got a totally messed up hive. And instead of working hard to raise more bees or to collect nectar to make honey for you to sell, they're putting their hive back together. And it can take days. Think about it when you are opening a hive. Are you putting it back together the bees' way or just any old way? A meddlesome beekeeper. If you're in your very first year of beekeeping, I really don't care how many times you open a hive and look into it. I expect that. After all, you don't have X-ray vision to see what's going on inside the hive. It's a box, and it's got bees doing something. The bees are your teachers. So if you are in your first year of beekeeping and you want to open up the hive and just simply watch what the bees are doing, fine. You might set them back a few days on whatever project they've got, but they will teach you something. However, past your first year, think about this. Well, what is a meddlesome beekeeper? Well, I was in the hive on Saturday, but I didn't see the queen. So today's Tuesday. I think I better go back in. I think I better go see what if there's a queen there. Goes in on Tuesday. I can't find the queen. Must be one. Well, think about it. It's Thursday. You know, I better go back in there and rummage around and see if I can find the queen. And Saturday comes. He opens up the hive. He's going to look for the queen, and he'd forgotten about checking for food. And the bees are saying, "Here he comes again." So don't be a meddlesome beekeeper. Go ahead, put on your veil, light your smoker, grab your hive tool, and say, "Why am I going into this hive?" What is my purpose? Am I just going in to look around? Or do I suspect a problem? Think about it. Why am I going into this hive? Have a purpose. Well, some other stresses on honeybees. It's an awful lot of green there. Where are the flowers? Not there. A lack of pollen and nectar is a definite stress on the bees, the colony. If they don't find it within their close, say up to 2 miles, they'll fly farther and farther and farther until they do find something. So it's really up to you to consider, are they bringing in enough nectar, bringing in enough pollen to be able to maintain brood rearing and the overall health? So know what you're doing. Stresses on honeybees, yes, too many bees for the available pasture. That pasture was a lovely meadow with flowers last year, and this year it's a field of wheat. Not much there. So consider what is going on around you. Are houses being built? And when houses are being built, they aren't necessarily planting bee-friendly plants. They're planting green stuff, but it may have absolutely nothing to do or nothing to offer the bees. Know what's going on in the circle, 2 miles, 3 miles, around your colonies. Keep track of it. Farmers do strange things, like change their crops. Municipalities do strange things, like build developments or a big shopping center. Depending on where you live, know what's going on. Strike out in a different direction, one that you've never gone on, to see what's going on around your colonies. Keep track of it. You'd be surprised what can happen. Weather. Good old Mother Nature. Mother Nature will do what she wishes. And if you've got too much rain, the bees aren't getting out. Nectar is being washed out of flowers. Too little rain. That's an extreme case. But too little rain means the plants are not getting what they need to produce a good set of flowers and nectar in those flowers. Too warm at the wrong time and too cold at the wrong time. You hope for the bee weather you want, but Mother Nature doesn't always give it to you. So therefore, you need to be a plant watcher and a weather watcher. And when I say weather watcher, I don't mean, ooh, I think it's raining today, maybe I better take an umbrella. I mean, what happened yesterday and last month? Is it going to be too wet, too dry? What is happening with the weather over a period of time? That's what's important. So be a weather watcher, be a plant watcher, and your bees will thank you for it. Well, we don't have windmills and canals, but I sort of like the picture. It does illustrate wind and damp. Now, bees can cope with a certain amount of wind. That's okay. But damp is very, very difficult for bees to cope with. The interior of the hive, where the brood is being raised, has to be kept at a certain humidity. And the only way the bees can control the air going through the hive is by fanning their wings at the entrance or bringing in moisture to do their air conditioning, fanning, and cool the hive down. But they've got to take care of humidity. When bees eat, the adult bee will eat honey and produce, just like you do, carbon dioxide and water vapor. The water vapor must leave the hive so that the humidity in there does not become too great. The carbon dioxide actually goes down in the hive and out the front. So ventilation is essential for a healthy bee colony. And think about it. Are you providing plenty of ventilation for your bees? They do very, very well with plenty of airflow past the hive. They don't do well with a prevailing wind blowing in the entrance because they can't control it. They can do fine with wind if it's not going directly in. So know where your prevailing winds come from so that your bees can cope with damp and wind. Well, what about moving hives? Some people do move hives for a honey crop, and some move for pollination. Interestingly enough, the big guys, the ones who are moving 10,000, 20,000 and more hives, do a very, very good job of moving. The ones that do the really poor job is a small beekeeper. Someone asked them to move 1 or 2 hives for pollination of my garden crops. So they shove these either in the back of the car or in a pickup, and they don't pay attention to the frames banging and clanging around. Queens get squished, bees get dumped. They aren't happy. It is a real stress. The big pollinators have equipment that keeps the frames from swinging and clanging. Those frames are immobilized. If you see beehives on a pallet, the pallet, unseen to you, has a set of wire bumps holding the frames steady. The small pollinator, 1 or 2 hives shoved in the back of a pickup truck, doesn't have that, and didn't even think of it, and didn't know they existed. So if you are ever asked to move hives, give some consideration to the bees going down a bumpy road or stopping at stoplights, accelerating, decelerating. It can be hard on traveling. Be sure your frames are going in the direction of travel and not against the travel, going clank, 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 clank. You'll probably lose some points. Well, we've got a problem. We've got wax contamination. Miticides, PDB that people use for wax moth, and misuse of medicines. People are absolutely great. The doctor says take 1 pill once a day. So you go home and think, oh, I really feel absolutely terrible, so he said 1 pill. I'll take 2. If 1 is good, 2 is better. No, it's not. It's the same thing with bees. If the label tells you what to do, you do it. You don't say, oh, if 2 strips are good, I'll put 4 in. This has got to be at least twice as good. It's like the coasters I told you. You put 3 drops on, and it'll chase the hive beetles out. You put 6 drops on, you'll chase your bees out, and they don't want that. That would be a stress on your bees. Well, the people at Penn State looked at wax contamination. When I talked to the researchers last August, I said, well, how many are you up to now? And they said 171 different pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, and who knows what else. And I said, oh, well, that was a jump from 121 a couple of years ago. They said, yes, the problem is testing for these compounds is very costly. So when we have enough money, we test for some other ones. So that's why we're up to 171. So this is March. I don't know how many they're up to now. I haven't checked with them recently. But they know the miticides are in there, in the wax, in the commercial wax. The PDB that's used for wax moth, the directions say, well, air out the comb for a few days and it'll be fine. No, it's not. The wax actually is a very, very interesting substance. It has many, many chemical compounds in it. And when these wax moth compounds and the herbicides, fungicides, pesticides get into the wax, they actually chemically combine and do not exit the wax. So if you think airing out for 2 or 3 days after the PDB treatment got rid of it, it got rid of a lot of it, but there is still some in there and you can't smell it because frankly human beings are not very good sniffers. Dogs and bears are vastly better. So one sniff of your wax is not going to tell you if it's got PDB in it. So think about it. The wax is contaminated. And we also know that it gets contaminated by bees bringing in contamination from the flowers they visit. So it is a good idea to rotate your comb out. If you can do it every 3 years, that would be very good for your bees. The bees will cope with that rotation much better than just leaving the comb in there forever. Remember, the cocoons that are in there hold various compounds in them also. So you have not only the wax, but those leftover cocoons. Not good. Well, diseases. Any of the diseases, the viruses, are extremely difficult to cope with. Chalk brood usually appears and disappears by itself, but in the meantime, the bees have to cope with it. So it is a stress. The bacterial diseases, yes. Think about American foul brood. That is a fatal stress. Harassed by critters. Well, that little blue beetle is not exactly what the small hive beetle looks like, but it's the only little beetle I could find to put on the slide. So, small hive beetle, yes, it is a stress. The bees cope with it with their prisons, their propolis and wax prisons, but Every time you go into the hive, you break open the prisons, and the female small hive beetle says, lay eggs, I gotta lay eggs. We don't know why, but that is what they do. So that every time you are disturbing the colony, you put the small hive beetle into a panic and are increasing the problem. A very good reason to say, why am I going into this hive? Mice can move in, especially if it's a weak colony and poor defenses, and it's out in a rural area. Mrs. Mouse can move in because it's a nice dry place to live. Bears, I've got bears. I don't know whether you've got bears down here. But any critter that would be, have you got skunks? Oh, yes. Skunks can really make a colony very stressed because the skunk will come tonight, and that was a really easy dinner. So we'll come back tomorrow night, and by the third or fourth night, you got a very stressed and very upset colony. You go into it and wonder why these bees are absolutely nasty. Look for the skunk signs, scratches on the surface of the hive by the entrance. The ground may be torn up around. So, and you may find the little spat out remnants of the bees, because the skunk squishes them, and if you've ever tried a squished bee, they are a bit sweet because they do have some honey inside of them, but the rest of the bee is sort of crunchy, and the skunk doesn't really want it, so it just spits it out on the ground. So look for those, look for ground that's dug up, and keep the skunks away from your hive. These days, we've got queen problems. Everybody's got queen problems. In fact, in the UK and Canada and the United States, one of the big questions is, what's the matter with our queens? We are getting supersedure, and has increased enormously. We've got queens that come, lay lots of eggs, everything fine, and then she fizzles out. We don't know what is going on. Is it wax contamination? Is it pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, other sides? We don't know. But the researchers are looking into it as to what the problem is with the queens. One day we'll find it. In the meantime, pay careful attention to the performance of your queen. If she seems to be failing, you can be sure that two things are going to happen. A small hive beetle can move in very easily, but so can wax moth. So you have a declining colony, and you end up with no colony and a mess to clean up. The wax moth is actually Mother Nature's house cleaner. She will clean up abandoned nests of honeybees. In trees, you wonder, well, what happens to bees living in trees? Well, if they die, the wax moth is going to move in. All of that old wax will be destroyed. No more disease. The bees that move into that hollow tree from a swarm will construct fresh new wax. and that's good. So sometimes we have to thank the wax moth, even though they do make a dreadful mess. Well, what can you do? I've poured a bunch of ideas into your head. Consider the stresses on your colonies. Make some decisions. Are you going to say to yourself, why am I going into this hive? And take action. Put your smoker out, hive tool away, take your veil off, and say, I can't think of a good reason to go into that hive. Or maybe you do have to go in and find out if you've got a queen that is fizzling out and you need to get a new queen for it, so that you don't end up with no hive at all, no colony, no queen, no honey. Thank you. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Yes?
I was wondering of the strength of the wintergreen. Like a lot of times you'll get essential oils and you don't know the strength at all. Is there any way to tell whether you have pure wintergreen or diluted?
The best thing, if you know what shop you're getting it from, they may be able to tell you. If one place that does sell high quality wintergreen oil is Glory Bee, but they're out in Oregon, and they would have to mail it to you, which is fine, but health stores do carry it, and I think you would have to trust what the store says. Yes?
Two of my predators for bees are the Jesus lizards and the bufo frogs. They just sit there and just bufo. And so if for newbies or anybody else, keep an eye out. If you see them hanging around, they will stay around.
Pellet guns work well.
Yes, they can. The other thing is that sometimes if vegetation is hanging over a hive, I've seen this in some of the tropical countries I've worked with, the lizards would go up the trees and just simply drop down on the hives. As far as lizards go, they can be difficult. Also, some of the toads, sometimes elevating the hive up, and if you can put feet of a hive stand in oil, that does keep down ants very well, and you may be able to prevent the lizards from climbing up onto it, but they can drop down off of foliage onto hives. Yes?
Only the wintergreen, none of the other mints, like peppermint.
Oil of wintergreen. Yes.
For those beautiful toads, give them a slice of fuzzy ammonia. They're dead within about 2 steps.
What'd you say?
You don't have locust frogs up there in Virginia, though, I don't believe.
They don't have that.
No, I didn't
No.
think they had those up there. They sit in front of our hives, and then we'll just sit there and eat the bees like candy.
Yes, yeah.
I'm sure any frog would do that, so.
It's usually the toads that do that. And in some areas of Virginia, they would have problems with toads. If you can keep various critters away from the entrance of the hive by getting some chicken wire and making a roll of it. This works for skunks too. And placing it so that the critter cannot get too close to the entrance, So the bees can fly right through chicken wire. So the bees will fly, and if you can get the bees to fly up, the toad cannot do anything about it. Yes.
The bufo toads are poisonous and invasive.
Mm-hmm.
So last night I sent my first one to Siberia. I catch them
Put them in the freezer.
and I put them in a freezer.
That's what I do.
And
That's what I do.
it's actually the most humane way to kill them because they go into hibernation and then you just leave them there a little extra long.
An easy way to catch them is that, I had a hip replacement. You can get there's a gun, like an arm with a handle on it that they grab for older people that can't reach something upstairs. And you can grab the bufo frogs with that and put them in a Ziploc and put them right in the freezer, and and they just go to sleep and then throw them away.
The boo-foo toads in my yard, they're too damn quick. I go within 10, 15 feet, and they're hopping up underneath and getting gone.
I use a fishnet or my hands.
What'd you do?
Yeah,
You got a question over there?
yes.
Fishnet.
Yes.
Where, I missed the question.
Oh, no, he's over there. There we go.
Oh, yes.
A lot of commercial beekeepers like to make the pallets with screens.
Yes.
What effect it will do on the hive? You mentioned a lot about the dampness in the hive.
Yes.
Is it not causing more problems for the hive?
No, it makes it easier for the bees to ventilate.
What about the water, the moisture in the ground? If it's too close like this?
Yeah, if it's too close, then you want to,
Commercial guys, because they put on the pallet everything.
yes, but they aren't necessarily putting it in a damp place. So,
And
If-
after rain, but it's a lot of rain.
if it's a lot of rain, it would depend on the crop being pollinated and how long the bees are going to be in there. If it is raining, they aren't going to get very good pollination. They may pull out. Yeah. Yes.
What's your opinion on screen bottom boards versus solid bottom boards with the ventilation issue?
We use screen bottom boards all the time now, year round. Mhm.
Even through the winter.
Oh, yes, yes.
And are you in Florida?
No, I'm in the mountains of Virginia, northern part. And it is, yes, it is cold. Yep, one morning I got up to go feed the horses and the thermometer said 0 and the wind chill said -8. And I said, it's cold out there. But that was not the only morning that it said that. We had
You don't
many
put a
more.
plate in during the winter then?
No, just fine.
It doesn't, the bees don't keep moving up to get away from the draft coming up?
No, you've got to remember the dynamics of the winter cluster. During the winter time, we definitely, during the months of, you can say November, December, January, February, and even March, and the bees will spend a lot of time at night in their winter cluster, and the dynamics of the winter cluster work very well if you have what you should have, a strong colony. If you've got a real wimpy colony, it's not going to make it through the winter anyway for other reasons. So we've all, screen bottom boards are the way to go, and we are using even screened inner covers.
And maybe you should explain how that vortex works, how the bees travel from the inside to the outside.
Well, it's more complicated than that, actually. It's the winter cluster is not a simple, does not have simple dynamics, because you do have circulation of bees from the outer to the inner core, but you also have your filling station bees, which are going to get honey and bring it back. And so several things happen at a point. Those filling station bees will stay in the cluster, and the cluster does have a circulation to keep, you could say the inner bees are generating heat, but so are bees in the outer core. Generation of heat comes from eating honey and being able to move the muscles in the thorax. The thorax is where the muscles can work. Muscles, when in motion, doing something, generate heat, even with what we would call cold-blooded insects. All they have to do is to move their wings. And bumblebees do this. A bumblebee caught on a flower on a chilly night will simply go to sleep there. And when the morning starts to warm a bit, the bumblebee will start to shiver the thorax muscles and warm herself up and fly away. And bees do exactly the same thing. They shiver the muscles in the thorax to generate heat. So you've got heat being generated, heat being transferred within this cluster, and warming the bees that are coming, the filling station bees that are coming back. So it gets a little more complicated than just a transfer in and out, in and out. Yeah. I tried to.
How many hives do you have?
Right at the moment, after the winter we've had, I might have nothing. I don't know. I did not have a single day in February to even get there. We've had snow and ice on the ground, and all I can do is hope. I have my bees in a teaching apiary. It is on a farm near home that is being used for youth activities, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, school groups, church groups, who come and participate in various activities on this farm, and the beekeeping is one of them. I like to run about 10 hives. Yes, those hives are stressed, but those hives are not there for honey production. I did, when I lived in Maryland before I moved down to Virginia, I did run about 50 hives for honey production. But when I had this opportunity, when I moved to Virginia, of being able to use the bees for teaching beekeepers and for working with youth groups. The nice thing about the facility is there is a sustainable vegetable and flower garden as part of the activities. So I do the bee bit with pollination, and then I send them over to the gardens where the bees are working, and it works great.
Do you feed them in the wintertime?
I want to have at least 60 pounds of honey or honey from sugar water in the hive at the end of October. That is what I do. Now, I am fortunate in living in an area where we have goldenrod. The aster blooms until frost comes. But if I've got that much in the hive, I do not have to feed in the winter. And that is my goal.
And that carries them for the winter, from October on?
Yes,
Wow.
yes, end of October.
60 pounds, my goodness.
Yes.
Don't get too cold.
And that 60 pounds, don't get the bears in there?
when, excuse me, when I am teaching, and I'm in the middle of teaching new beekeeper classes right now. We've had a few snow days, but I tell new beekeepers, and you have to do this all throughout Virginia and Maryland and West Virginia and Pennsylvania and the Carolinas. First, you put up your bear fence, and then you get your bees. If you don't, I tell them, do not telephone me and say, oh, the mayor's got my bees, because I will say, I told you so, and hang up.
Please, you said that your hives are catching goldenrod
Yes,
and the bees winter in it.
yes,
Goldenrod is a fast crystallizing honey.
yes it is.
So don't you have a problem
No,
with the bees?
no. They can use it just fine.
Don't they get overloaded, the guts, because they have to use a lot more?
The crystallization has nothing to do with the residues in the gut. The crystallization is no more than crystallized glucose.
Yeah, but they have to produce more water to dilute the crystals.
They are actually generating enough moisture to where they can use that.
In Russia, I am from Russia.
Yes.
Crystallization of the honey
Mhm.
was always the biggest problem and number one of the bees dying in the winter. They would defecate in the hive, because the honey would be crystallized. They cannot consume. Maybe in your area, in a normal winter, they have 3-4 times, at least every 2 weeks, they can go out and clean themselves in a normal winter, correct? But if it's a hard winter, then you will see what will happen with this. The honey will be hard like a rock, and they couldn't use it. If they can go out and clean themselves every 2 weeks, which is inconvenient, then it's okay. If they can't, they can't survive on hard honey. That's why we always took all the honey and gave them 80% of sugar water. So they would winter, and in the spring, they would come up to the top where the normal honey is.
Yes.
Then in the spring, it's no problem. They go get water, dilute it, give it.
Yes.
So goldenrod honey gets hot.
Yes.
Not good, correct?
Well, it does crystallize quite rapidly,
Yes.
and the bees seem to be able to cope with it quite well.
If they can fly out every 2 weeks out to come back to clean, to take a poop. If they don't cannot go out to poop.
Yeah. Yes.
How often do you recommend going into the hive?
What was the question?
She asked, how often do I recommend going into a hive? Well, it is going to depend on what I see at the entrance. There's a wonderful book, it's a British book, it's called At the Hive Entrance, and it's by Storch. And it's a really very, very nice book, because he advocates looking to see what's going on at the entrance before you do anything. And that's what I do. Do I see bees coming in with pollen? That means that, one, there's pollen-producing plants blooming, because I'm a weather watcher and a plant watcher. And if I see plenty of pollen coming in, I know there's brood. When you see a bee coming in with nothing, you don't know whether she's bringing water, nectar, or nothing. So I say, well, I see a lot of activity. I don't think I'll go in this time. So it's very, very hard to say, to put a schedule on it. If I were to go in and see that there are plenty of bees, everything seems to be fine, I might not go in for 3 or 4 weeks, not bother. But I look at the entrance. If at the entrance I see nothing coming in, no bees going out, I want to see guard bees at the entrance, meaning that there have enough bees to have a small percent of guards, then everything should be all right.
So once a month should be ample.
Yes, but if you go in and you say, no, I don't like, say, the brood pattern, or something else doesn't seem to be right, then you might say, well, I'll close it up and I'll come back in a week and see if it's going up or going down. So it's very hard to have a schedule. Yes?
Everything may be looking right, but you still want to harvest some honey, though. So do you have a rule of thumb, or did you just go in, just take a peek at the super?
I'm a plant watcher and a weather watcher. I know when my strong nectar flow is going to begin. I watch the plants, the trees, the flowers that are going to be my main nectar flow. And I watch the plants. I watch the weather. And I say, okay, the black locust is coming into bloom. The weather looks good. The supers will go on. Now, I will have to check the supers to make certain, because black locust is a weird tree. It can come into full, beautiful bloom and not produce a drop of nectar. But you'll find out, all you have to do is take the top off, and trees are in full bloom. Is anything in the super? If nothing's in the super, then I've got to watch for the next nectar flow after black locust. So I watch the plants, I watch the weather. I have lost crops because of weather. I can remember one horrible year when the tulip poplar trees came into full bloom. I was in a forest of tulip poplar trees, and I could just count the pounds of honey that I was going to produce. So on went the supers, and I went on to bed, and during the night we had a rain and windstorm, and I came out the next morning. The ground was covered with tulip poplar petals. I pulled the supers off because I knew that there would be enough sustainable flowers for the bees, but I also knew I wasn't going to make any honey that year. There it was on the ground. Not good. So that's why I keep saying weather watcher, plant watcher. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you, Ann.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. In case I didn't mention it, Ann is a writer and editor for, I believe it's called the ABC and XYZ.
No,
or
no,
is it,
no.
What's it called now?
I write, oh, yes, I get that.
She writes for Bee Culture, right?
Yeah, I have a monthly article in Bee Culture. I also write for Beekeepers Quarterly, which is out of the UK, it's a quarterly beekeeping magazine. And I write for Beecraft, which is a UK magazine for their beekeepers. I also have edited a number of beekeeping books. If you own the 2007 edition of ABC and XYZ, you can look on the author page. And I've edited a number of other books.